Hey, this is Alexa Peterson with the Hitting Vault. I'm going to be doing a swing analysis on Minnesota's Hope Brandner. She's only a sophomore. Is hitting 364 and hit. This is her 19th home run this swing, and she hit it for a walk-off the other day against Georgia. So we're going to take a look at her swing. Starting stance, hands are just a little bit below shoulder height there. Front shoulder you can see is a little bit lower than her back shoulder. Some bend in her front knee and her back knee. Front foot is open a little bit compared to that back foot there. A little bit of hip hinge to start. So let's get going with the load. Start to see her hands start going down a little bit, and that's okay in the load, as long as you're able to control the movement and you still get to a good launch position. That's what really matters, as long as you're in control of your body, getting to that movement. So you start to see her hands actually drop down a little bit. She has a higher leg kick. She has what's called internal hip rotation. You can see that pocket basically being shown to the pitcher, and that's going to kind of give a head start for the hips to really get those hips generating a lot of speed and a lot of power. And this is totally fine for a hitter to do, as long as they're able to control that movement. Maybe she didn't hit exactly like this when she was 10 years old, but as she gained control of her body, she's able to really start to internally rotate that hip. And we'll see as she starts to go forward that pocket starts to open up, kind of starts to turn those hips. You can see it going back. Those hips are turning. But notice you can see a little bit where her hands are. As she goes forward, her hands, you see that little spot right there, you actually see her hands start working up. So as she goes forward, she's creating separation, and we want to have separation because it's going to act like a rubber band effect. We want to stretch the rubber band as far as we can, because it's going to help it snap through with a lot more speed. Obviously we need to be in control of that. We can't have our hands way outside our back foot, because that'd be like, as if you're, snapping the rubber band, like breaking it. We don't want to go that far that we would break the rubber band. So same thing, it could cause an effect, and issues in your swing, have bad effects if your hands are way outside and you're overly stretched. But we do want to get the max amount of stretch we can. She does a great job at getting really stretched out, getting to that good launch position. So we see here in her launch position, which is right when her heel hits, that front foot is a little bit open, and compared to that back foot, and that's totally fine as long as that front shoulder still stays down and in. You see she's maintained some hip hinge here, so her eyes are pretty much over her toes. We'll see a lot of younger hitters, they'll stride forward, and in this position their head is right here and their spine is straight up and down. We need to make sure that we have some torso tilt or hip hinge, whatever you want to call it, because that's going to help you turn and be on plane of the pitch for longer versus working around in a circle. So going forward after the launch position, you can see right here that she's getting a lot more bend in her knee, because she's recognizing this is a changeup. This ended up being an off speed. She was fooled a little bit, but you'll see she gets to that good launch position right there. She has some bend in that knee, and she actually ends up getting more bend in that front knee. You see her creating more bend, and that's actually delaying everything a little bit with her hips and her hands. Everything's delayed a little bit to give her time to barrel it up. So that's the important part of, when we stride forward, getting to that good launch position, we want to have some bend in our front knee, just like that, to be able to adjust. If we stride forward, a lot of kids stride forward and they lock out that front foot immediately, they're going to have a really tough time being able to adjust to off-speed pitches, or if they're early, just like this. You can see her kind of sinking into that front knee a little bit, turning those hips still. And you see that barrel, she's fighting to keep those hands back, and then she still releases the barrel hard. She's swinging hard. She's not trying to slow down her swing. It may not be the prettiest of swings, but this movement that she does with that knee to be able to sink and keep this all back a split second longer allows her barrel, just gives her a little bit more time to be able to barrel it up. And she ends up barreling it up. Back foot releases. You see that back foot coming off the ground. She goes forward a little bit. Shoulders are tilted, front shoulder down. A great adjustment for that pitch, for her being off speed, and her being caught off guard a little bit. Go to the side angle. You can see her starting stance right there. Front shoulder lower than the back shoulder. We see that in pretty much all elite hitters. It helps with that movement. as you stride forward to keep that front shoulder down and in when she strides forward. A lot of hitters will start with that front shoulder up. As they stride forward, that front shoulder still stays up, and that gets you in a bad position there. So going to the load, high leg kick, again, totally fine as long as that posture is staying in control. We see that front shoulder still down and in. She's in control of this leg kick. So a lot of kids will try to bring up that leg, that front shoulder will shoot up, back shoulder drops down, weight way out on the backside foot. We don't want that. But this is a great position to be in control of her swing. Starts to go forward, and we see that head movement now going down and forward. Notice how she's really kind of pinching that back shoulder blade, bringing those hands up and back, because on her load, notice how low they are. As she goes forward, she brings them up to create that good stretch and get into that good launch position. So she has a nice controlled fall going forward. Gets to that good launch position, really stretched out. Hands are right by that back foot. Front shoulder is still down and in. A lot of hitters have that front shoulder up at this point. We need that front shoulder to be down and in so that you can adjust to different heights of pitches. If you just immediately have that front shoulder up, angled up like this, you're going to be up underneath everything. You aren't going to be able to adjust to a high pitch. So we want to be able to get to that good position right there. Her head is pretty well centered over her body. We saw how she had a little bit of bend in her front knee. Good distance between her feet. She's a little bit greater than probably 50% of her height. Average is around 50 to 60% of the height difference, the distance between the feet. And that's, she looks a little bit more stretched out than normal, but that's totally fine as long as this upper half is in a good position, because what happens is people will stride too far and then that back shoulder drops too early, and we don't want that back shoulder dropping too early. Yes, we want it to drop, but it's a matter of when does it drop. And so what we'll see here is after launch position, now that back shoulder starts to drop, front shoulder starting to go up. She's turning her hips, and you see that she's, keeps more bend in that front knee like we talked about earlier to help give her that split second longer before she releases that barrel. Back foot becomes weightless. She actually moves it forward. So hitters that tend to be a little bit more, on the side of wide, like we would consider her a little bit wide here. Again, it's fine because she maintains that good posture here. But what you'll see more often with hitters that are pretty wide is you'll see this back foot become weightless. Yes, like what we see with all hitters regardless, but what we'll see with those hitters that stride really far is this back foot will move in pretty far. So you look at her back foot. Let's put a circle around her back foot there. Now watch her back foot, how far forward it goes there. And it could be a little bit because she's a little bit early on this pitch on a changeup adjusting. But on a couple of her other swings too, I've seen that back foot really moves forward, and that's okay as long as through this middle part right here, that head is staying still. And so that's really important, that the head is staying still. This part right through here, you see that little bit of head movement through there. That's because she's early. Okay, so typically what we see with hitters that are on time, after launch position, that head stays pretty darn still right around in that little circle right there. But she goes forward a little bit, but she then kind of firms up. She firms up this front side here as she gets really close to contact, and right in this last little bit, that head is nice and still. You can see it right there. So that's a couple different things with that lower half. We don't want to squish the bug. We don't want that heel to be going backwards immediately. But again, you'll see forward movement when hitters are a little bit wider. If someone was a little bit more narrow, you might see a little bit more what could look like squish the bug. But the difference between squishing the bug and not squishing the bug is that back foot becoming weightless. Even if it's for a split second, that back foot should come up onto that toe right there. See how that's a weightless movement with that back foot right there. We want to make sure that we're not keeping weight and just spinning our back foot back here. It's going to make everything be rotated too far around. We want to be on the plane of the pitch for as long as possible. So you can see she really gets on plane early back here, stays through the zone well. Good extension, byproduct of being on plane and her body working the right way. So overall, has a great swing. As a sophomore, I'm excited to keep watching her for the next couple years.